Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Ashley Opliger to Author's Corner. She has written the book Cradled in Hope, a biblical guide for grieving miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss, which is published by Bethany House, a division of Baker Publishing Group. And Ashley will tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us on Author's Corner.
Thank you so much for having me, Roberta.
So your book, Cradled in Hope, begins with such a tender spot written to moms. You actually share your heart with them right at the beginning of the book before getting into, shall we say, the meat and potatoes of the book. I just thought it was pretty amazing the way that you started the book. Why did you feel led to do so?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for noticing. And the beginning of the book, just to set the stage, it invites moms to meet me in this little blue barn in Keachai, Kansas. You might be thinking, what does a little blue barn in Keachai, Kansas have to do with anything? Well, after the loss of our daughter, Bridget, we started a ministry, a nonprofit called Bridget's Cradles, and we started that in her empty nursery here in Wichita, Kansas, but it grew to the point that we have a little headquarters building, and it's in a blue barn-looking building. It's just like a metal building, and that is now where we have all of our operations for the cradles that we send out to thousands of hospitals. We have all of our support groups in person are there. We do have online options as well. But this is where I meet with grieving moms face-to-face and shoulder-to-shoulder. And so as I was thinking about this book and how I wanted to start the book was I wanted to metaphorically think about the mom who's picking up the book. There's obviously space between her and I, that she's sitting and reading this in her room or somewhere in another state, possibly, than Kansas. And so I thought, I want this to feel as though we're sitting together and that I'm with you in this journey and I'm holding your hand. And so the opening introduction really just sets the table for saying, I want you to meet me here. I want to know your story. I want to hear about your baby. I want to tell you about my daughter, Bridget, and just welcome you into this very safe place to just come as you are and be exactly where you are in your grief. You don't have to pretend that you're doing better than you are. You don't have to dress up for me. You can just come even if you feel like you're a mess. And so often in grief, you are just struggling so much with the emotions and the spiritual questions and the physical demands that grief has on your body and your brain. And so really just inviting moms to show up as they are, to know that there's someone that's going to sit with them in this journey and walk with them along the way. And so that's why I started the book that way, was to really have it be so similar to how I would navigate an in-person relationship here in Wichita.
Wonderful. The first chapter of the book is titled Sitting with Jesus. This is where you share about the overwhelming waves of sadness that can come. People may say some very painful words like, isn't it about time you get over this, or something along that line. Grief is something that takes time, isn't it?
Yeah, and some people might not be as forthcoming to say that, but their actions and their other passive words might make you feel that they're rushing you to move forward in grief, and you might feel the demands from yourself or culture or people around you that there's some timeline of grief that you need to move through quickly, and people place this feeling like they want you to get back to your old self and to act like you used to, and grief has now changed you, and you're not going to be the same person that you were before. And so that first chapter, sitting in sadness and being with Jesus and lamenting, was really core to be at the beginning of my book, because I basically say that without grieving, we cannot find healing. We do have to sit with our sadness. We do have to process it with the Lord. If we try to push it down, stuff it down, to try to keep busy or distracted from our grief and just move on and get back into the daily rhythm, we're going to have all of this pent-up pain and sadness, and it's going to come out over time. And ultimately, what I share in the book is that I believe that the Lord can heal our hearts, but we have to surrender them to Him, but we also have to be willing to sit in the raw pain and emotion of grief and to really grieve our babies. And that can be really painful and hard to do, especially living in a culture that's so uncomfortable with grief and death and sadness.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. When you were grieving the loss of Bridget, did you go through a time of feeling that God was distant? And how did your faith help you overcome that?
Yeah, so I have several chapters that talk about the nature of God and also the feelings of questioning who He is and wondering if He's abandoned you in grief. And I share a specific instance. So for me, I was on bed rest with Bridget while I was pregnant with her. I started having complications at 13 weeks, and I was on bed rest until 24 weeks, 5 days when she was delivered and she was stillborn. And that time in between when I was carrying her was actually when I felt the most abandoned by God, because I was praying and praying that she would be full term and healthy and that the hemorrhage would subside and that it would heal. And it felt like every time we went to the doctor, we were given more bad news and the prognosis became very grim. And so throughout this time, I'm thinking, Lord, I'm praying. I want to raise this daughter to know you and to walk in the ways of the Lord. And why are you not answering these prayers? Why are you allowing her to die? And, how could a good God allow this to happen? And I think that time period I felt very alone and forsaken, like God was somehow punishing me or walking away. And it really took a while for me to understand His good nature and that He is not a God that punishes or condemns, that He is a God that weeps with us and grieves over death, and that this was not His plan for Bridget's life, but yet He is going to use what the enemy meant for evil for good, and He's going to restore and use her life for good. And I've seen that in so many beautiful ways through my daughter's life, but through my life and through my own grief as well. And over time, as I really studied His character in the Word, I just grew to have an understanding that I could trust Him and that He had not left me, not the entire time that I was pregnant and not any day after.
Amen. So today I'm talking with Ashley Opliger regarding the book Cradled in Hope, a biblical guide for grieving miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss, published by Bethany House, a division of Baker Publishing Group. And you're listening to Author's Corner. I'm Roberta Foster. When I was going through the book, I opened it to chapter 8. They know not what they do when you're hurt by others. And I can only imagine that the unintentional hurting from other people must be something that you endured for quite some time, or that another mom that has lost a child would endure for quite some time, because after a while, other people aren't living in the loss that the mom is. And so tell us what you write about in that chapter and how it can be helpful for the mom as well as people around her.
Yeah, so I've been leading support groups for grieving moms since 2018, and I have yet to meet a mom who has not told me that someone has hurt her in the midst of her grieving process. And most of the time when I say this, it's not someone saying something intentionally mean or harmful.
Right.
But a lot of times people have good intentions, but their delivery or execution of how they say it can come across insensitive or hurtful. And so it could range from a family member or a friend, a coworker, someone, even a stranger saying something that they're not intending to say something hurtful. And other times it can be family members or friends not saying anything at all and not talking about your baby, and that can feel very hurtful as well. And so throughout that chapter, I address those different situations. I share some very specific examples from my own journey and how painful that was for me. But really, ultimately, I had to learn to see people's heart and to give them grace. That just because I've lost a baby does not give me a free pass to withhold forgiveness for others. And I think for me, when I started to see people's heart, that they were trying to comfort me or they were trying to help me look on the bright side, yes, that's not super helpful in that moment. That's not what I'm looking for when I'm sharing my heart. I don't need someone to try to fix it or try to make it better. But a lot of times that's human nature, is when someone's hurting, someone will try to say something to like cheer them up. And a lot of times those comments will kind of come out sideways. And so I talk about having a grace cup just pre-filled, ready to pour on people, because ultimately there will be a point in your day. Even a stranger might make a comment, that they might ask you how many kids you have, and then you might say how many kids, including the child in heaven, and then they might respond awkwardly because they weren't expecting that, and then you feel hurt because you don't feel like they really heard or showed you compassion. And so there's so many instances of different circumstances I've talked with grieving moms that has been really painful, and I've found that if I'm already assuming that something will come up and someone might say something and I have grace for them in advance, that I'm not going to take offense to what they're saying, that I can see the heart in what they're saying, and I can have an empathy and understanding that it might be awkward for them to have this conversation. It has helped me because I feel like there have been many times where those triggering situations have derailed my day and have made my emotions just go in a tailspin, and ultimately having grace for people has really helped me in my own emotional journey, and just being able to give that to other people, because there have been times that I may not have been the most compassionate before I lost Bridget. I didn't know how to comfort people that were walking through this. And so I think that's very helpful to have that understanding that not everyone has had the same experiences. They don't know how to handle these situations, and to give them grace.
So share with us a couple of things that people who, we'll just say people that were around you, things that they could do to help you through your time of grief.
Yeah, and Bridget's Cradles, our nonprofit, we actually have a free ebook on our website if someone wants to dive deeper into what I'm about to share. But we have an ebook that has specific ideas on how to love someone who's lost a baby
wonderful.
and support them. And so it also has gift ideas and things to say, things not to say, that kind of thing. But really what I've found is just being present and engaged with people who are grieving, not rushing them through the grief, being willing to sit with them, let them share their heart and their sadness, cry with them, just showing empathy. I also think being really practical in the ways that you show up. A lot of times people will text and say, I'm here if you need anything. Let me know if you need anything. And usually someone who's grieving isn't going to take you up on that offer. But if instead you were to text them and say, I want to bring you dinner this week, is Monday or Tuesday better?
There you go.
Most likely that person's going to give you a response and say Tuesday would be better. And so I think just showing up in very practical ways to help them through their grieving journey. And then if you can, try to remember those milestones, their baby's heaven day, the day that they went to heaven, and support them even years later, just showing that you still remember, you still care, that the passage of time doesn't mean that they miss their baby any less. And I think that is really helpful when you're grieving, because a lot of times there's a lot of initial support right after you're lost, and then that really kind of over time trickles out, and then people that are grieving feel very alone. And so if you can show up even months, years later, set a reminder in your phone to send a card or a text on those milestone days, that can really go a long way in just showing up and being present.
Amen. Great suggestions. Well, today I've had the pleasure of talking with Ashley Opliger about her book, Cradled in Hope, a biblical guide for grieving miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. So before you leave us, Ashley, tell our listeners how they can find out more about this book and the ministry that you've mentioned, Bridget's Cradles.
Yeah, so the book is sold wherever books are sold, so Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you would normally buy books. But there's more information about the book on both the Bridget's Cradles website and my author website. So you can go to bridgetscradles.com and ashleyOpliger.com, and Opliger is spelled Opliger. And on both of those websites, you can find more resources and more information about our ministry and about my story. So I would love for you to check out those websites.
Wonderful. So one more time, the book today, Cradled in Hope, A Biblical Guide for Grieving Miscarriage, Stillbirth, and Infant Loss. I've been talking with Ashley Opliger, and we certainly thank Bethany House for providing us a copy of the book. Ashley, it's been so encouraging and helpful talking with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again, or possibly you've thought of somebody else that could really use the opportunity to hear this, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.